Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Music Production Podcast, and I'm your host, Brian Funk. On today's show, I have Emile Pandolfi. Emile has a book called Play It Like You Mean It. He's a classically trained pianist. He has over 30 albums, which is pretty incredible. He sold, some of these questions I'm going to have to ask you about because it's so interesting, but sold over 4.5 million CDs and 750 million streams on the platforms. We're going to talk quite a lot, I think, about not just the technical aspect of playing, but more importantly, sometimes even playing from the heart. And I think, although Emile is coming from a piano player perspective, this all applies to any kind of music, any kind of instrument you're playing, anything you're producing. And I have a feeling, like it is so many times, it's going to apply a lot to life as well. So I'm very excited to have him here. Emile, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's great to have you. And congratulations on the book, Play It Like You Mean It.
Yeah, that was, it wasn't because of the pandemic, but it happened during the pandemic, and it was something I could really get my teeth into. And I really enjoyed doing it. It took a couple of years of work, and it was worth every minute. I really, really enjoyed doing it because after all these years, I've been playing professionally for about 40 years or so. And it was good to have an outlet for what I believe in, really. I think of it as a philosophy book.
Yeah, I got that in my reading of it too. And it's nice to hear that you took the lockdown pandemic time and did something productive with it. I enjoy those stories because it was so tempting to just stay on the couch and, drown our sorrows or whatever we want to do, watching our Netflix all day.
Speaking of that, I saw you have 5 minute a day tutoring, and I thought that what a great idea that was.
Oh,
wow.
Thanks.
I don't know how long you've been doing that, but.
Well, that's kind of new. It's just, so I kind of feel for myself when I'm going to play and practice, as much as I love it, there's always a hurdle to get over. I kind of have to convince myself to do it. I guess it's inertia, right? Like if you're not moving, it's easy to continue to not moving. So I try to fool myself a lot of times with these small commitments, like, I'll just take the guitar out of the case, and it's like, I'm not going to just take it out of the case and put it down. I'll probably play it. And since it's something I enjoy, I tend to then fall into it. Or I'll open the computer and I'll just make a drum beat today. And then next thing you know, you get excited after a while. But sometimes that initial push is the challenge.
It is, but I really think just the fact of saying, because this is the first time I saw a 5 minute thing like that. And I thought, what a great idea, because I'm not afraid to open package one and see what's inside. I can afford 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's a great idea.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Pardon me, I've got a little laryngitis today.
Okay, sorry to have you on a podcast on a day like that. It's really cool that you've made that the most of that time. And I think what you're saying is so important for so many people to hear too. To give you just an idea of like myself as a musician, I've taken lessons on guitar, but I'm not formally trained and I don't have degrees in it. It's mostly just been something I always loved doing and just kept doing it enough where I started to figure it out a little bit. But for me, I've always really leaned on the emotion and the feeling of it, whereas the technical stuff wasn't always as exciting for me. And that might be also because it's intimidating too on a level. But that's always been my favorite type of players. I mean, we can go on the internet and find virtuosos at everything, yet I still love hearing somebody like Neil Young sing because of the way he's always present in his music when he does it. And the feeling behind it. It's not because he's a virtuoso or anything like that. It's the heart that's there. So I'm glad to hear you're bringing some attention to that and shining some light on how to access that part of it.
Well, I think that somehow for me, and probably for you, it's been a natural impulse to give all you've got into the playing of what you're doing. But for some people, somehow or other, they feel it here, but they don't know how to get it out. And that's I've heard so many people, including teachers, say, "I don't think you can teach that. If that people either have it or they don't." And I don't agree. Like anything else, some people have a great deal of talent, some people have less. I mean, it's just that's how it is. But for those of us who are on that cusp, and I know I have so much to say. If I could only, something that I put in the book that actually happened to me was a long time ago. I was playing cocktail piano, and a guy was standing over my shoulder watching. And after I played a couple of songs, he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "I bet I could do that if I just knew how." And I knew what he meant. Excuse me. I knew what he meant. You have to have the tools to do it, but somebody needs to help you bring it out of yourself. You have to know how. And that's what we hope to address in the book.
That seems like a philosophical thread that's kind of running through the book, is your belief that it can be taught. And and I remember looking at that story, and I think you might have said it kind of like broke your heart a little bit when you heard it, but you understood what he was saying. And for me, music is very much like that. I didn't start playing music until I was 14, and I didn't know anything at all. I didn't know if I had a guitar, I could play the songs I heard on the radio. I just assumed if you were on MTV, you got struck by lightning on a mountaintop, and you were the chosen one, and that's how you got it. I never thought about it too hard until it was right in front of my face, and that was very exciting for me. But I would have said, I'm not a musical person, and that's just the end of it. So this idea that you have, and I think you have a somewhat opposite upbringing with music, because I think you said you've been playing since you were about 8 years old, and you were fascinated with it from a young age. But you still feel that this is something we can all learn, and that we can practice putting the heart into it.
Well, I think that the challenge in the book was to break it down into parts that you could actually apply this. I started actually taking lessons when I was about 5. Excuse me. But I had that life-changing incident when I was about 8. But I feel like, of course, we all know we can learn the skills of an instrument. It's a skill like anything else, and some people will learn it faster, some slower, and so forth. But I also think the skill of communicating, whether it be in speech or dance or anything else, can be encouraged and hopefully guided in a way, because what it really means to me is being your authentic self. It's at the very beginning of the book, I quote an engineer friend of mine who said, "You only better." And it's like bigger, better.
You only
And that's
better.
what I think, that's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's a very hard thing, I think, for a lot of people to get at peace with. I know for me, especially, it is, where, I'm starting playing music and always wishing I could be a little better, singing, wishing my voice was better. But there was a point somewhere where I did sort of embrace the idea that, like, I might not be the best, but no one else sounds like me. I do have that going for me, and that's something we can kind of hold on to.
I think that's the thing that we all have to learn somewhere along the way. Even, again, I had a completely classical music education from early on and went to music school and all that. And I had to learn those things. But I remember a teacher would, if I'm playing a Beethoven sonata and Rubinstein played it, don't try to play it like Rubinstein. You have to learn the Beethoven sonata. But see, what would you do? I often say this to myself. I said, what would I do if I were Emile? If I were myself, what would I do? And what's the most natural thing that would come out of me musically? I talk the way I talk because I'm me. And again, like you say, it's just, we just want the best me I can be. And that's what I want I'm not a teacher, but I'm a coach. And in this book, I'm trying to get people to understand that what you're after is who you really are. And somebody said, well, how do I find out who I really am? Well, step aside and look at yourself. I'm looking at me. How do I dress? How do I talk? Do I use my hands? Am I ornate in things I like, or do I wear paisley or do I wear solid? These are all things that say who I am. And when I got at the piano, if I were dressing in paisley, I'd probably play a lot differently by my nature, but I dress the way I do, and it's a little bit more subtle. It's just how I be.
Right. You made me think of Elton John for a second there. My brother and his family just recently saw him play too, so it's amazing. He's still going and he's still rocking arenas. But he's got that totally different look, right? That's
who he is.
Style.
See, that's the thing. It's authentic, so it's okay.
Right.
The rest of us try to do that, it would look silly.
Yeah.
Like, even if it looks silly on him, he's a silly person.
Yeah, but there's that ownership. He's not apologizing for it. In fact, he's turning it up to 11, really.
It's wonderful.
There's a confidence.
And he happens to be a really fine musician and fine songwriter.
Yes.
Which helps.
Of course. That does help the confidence a bit. Now, I have to imagine coming up through the classical route and going to music school that there's such an emphasis on perfection and performance. So for example, I went to Stony Brook University in New York, and they have a really nice music program, and I took as many music classes as I could to fulfill my requirements. And for some of those classes, my assignment was to go to some of the performances or go to some of the recitals, and there would be, say, somebody playing something on the cello all by themselves, and everyone there with notepads, taking notes, and silent and tense. And I'm coming the day before, I was playing like punk rock music in a grimy bar, where it was just pure chaos. And then walking in there, much different feeling. And you could really, it was tangible tension in the air. So what I kind of thought about was, at that time, at least anyway, like, was there room for that emotional part, that expression, that self, unique thing, when the notes on the page are very specific and they're telling you exactly what to do, and the people grading you are looking for you know what I'm saying?
I remember that well, because they're teaching you stage fright.
Okay.
In case you didn't have it, you're going to have it now.
Right. Yeah. I think luckily for me, most of the places I played, people were, busy drinking and socializing. Yeah. So.
Well, and my whole career has been outside of classical. My entire career, ever since my first job, while I was still in school, was playing at a cafeteria. I mean, I'm talking about a cafeteria. They had a little spinet piano, and I played, made $25 or something, paid for lunch. But
nice.
But it's a much easier atmosphere, and I always wanted classical music to exist in that easygoing atmosphere too. It's just beautiful music. Mm-hmm. Happens to be classical. It happens to be very technically demanding. When you talk about the recitals and everyone with their notebooks, I know that perfectly, because I had 6 years of college, and that's what we did. And you kind of looking like this. Well, that's not the way Rubinstein played. Well, Horowitz held the note a little bit longer, and it's an intellectual involvement. But we have to remember that at least we are in school trying to learn something, so you got to give that a break for that. Mm-hmm. But it still happens in classical performances outside of school, that many of the people who go there are sitting like this because they've heard every recording by all the great artists, and they're comparing it mentally with what you're doing. So as the performer, you have to put all that aside and say, this is me playing Beethoven. This is how for me, I don't have stage fright. So because I don't mind looking stupid, I'm used to it.
I think that's helped me a lot too. The willingness to laugh at myself, and
yeah,
there's always going to be something that goes wrong, and
yeah.
at that time when I was going to school too, I was studying English and literature and to become an English teacher, which is what I do now as a grown up.
Oh,
And
my
thanks.
my my favorite. That's my other favorite besides music.
Oh, nice. So, in when you're studying, say, Shakespeare, you've got these plays that were written down after he was already dead and published.
Oh,
After he's
really?
already, yeah. So, people weren't reading the plays. You went to the theater, just like you go to the movies now.
Yeah,
You don't
right.
read the screenplay. But there's no video of that. There's no recording. We don't know like what tone of voice Hamlet said to be or not to be. And now all we have now are just various interpretations. But it's the same thing I would imagine for written music like that too. So is there a certain standard that people are being held to when or a certain interpretive standard from
Well, when I was growing up, there were like they'd say Cortot is a master interpreter of Chopin, and somebody else is can't think of the name right now is with Mozart or Beethoven. And I think I remember even at the time I didn't say so, but the standard you're being held to is the one I think that your teacher has, however he got it. But Alfred Cortot was supposed to be the Chopin expert. Well, I listened to some recordings. I didn't like his interpretation. And I thought, why do I don't, none of us know how Chopin sounded like when he played his own music. I don't know. But I do know that I don't feel an obligation to play it like most scholars think Chopin played it. Because it's a piece of music. If you think of classical music as pop music, then anything goes. I mean, I agree with playing the exact notes. I really do with the great masters. But also people play renditions of things, arrangements. But if I'm playing classical, I play the exact notes. But I don't play them exactly the way my hero played them, even if I love the way that person played. I grew up listening to Rubinstein, Horowitz, and Andre Previn, some of the great piano players. And I loved what they did, but I didn't feel an obligation to imitate that. And I think even with pop music, people grow up with their, if it's a female singer and she wants to be like Etta James singing At Last, or whatever happens to be her hero. And that's a mistake. You should just say, oh, that was divinely, enchantingly beautiful. Now I'm going to do my way. And not be afraid to do my way. Is it as good as Etta James? I don't know. It's different. And some people will like it, some people don't. I think the reason I've enjoyed some success with my recorded music is that it comes across that is me playing. A lot of people who write to me say, as soon as I put on Pandora or something, I can tell if it's you playing, because I have a style. I didn't make up a style. This is Emile's style. I just play what I feel, and it naturally comes through because the bottom line, it's authentically me. Pardon me. Laryngitis. I'm making me feel like the Godfather here. And I am an old Italian guy, but still.
I think it's adding gravity to your words, though.
Or at least gravelly.
Right. For me, in like learning cover songs, starting off, I was definitely really trying to play my guitar like I heard it on the record, and I learned a lot from that. It helped,
Yes.
and it taught me a lot. Even if the parts and the songs I was learning weren't technically difficult, some of the subtle things that the guitar players were doing were, and I tried to pick up on that as much as I can. But now when I play, and I really, if I'm being honest with myself, it's mostly because I knew I wasn't going to sound as good as the artists. Imitating them, you'll always be second-rate version. I would learn the songs and kind of play in my own way. And that helped a lot because it gave me a freedom to, if it's out of my vocal range, I'm going to have to maybe change something here, change the key a little bit, or the strumming pattern or something, just so I can make the ends meet of the music. But it was nice to have that freedom to not be tied to just simply photocopying what you'd heard on the the albums?
Yeah, to this day, I learn from listening to other pianists play. One of my favorite pianists of all time is Oscar Peterson, and what a genius! I mean, a technique of beyond the stars. But what I get from him is the way he feels about the music, and he happens to use his personal style to interpret it. But I agree. I mean, I really am sincere that to this day I still learn new ideas from listening to as many pianists as I can. But I guess the thing is, I don't go away saying, I hope I can do that. I just go away saying, wow, that was really cool. And it just becomes part of my thinking process. And next time I'm arranging, some of those little tidbits might pop into my mind. I don't know how to explain that, but it's more of an evolution, I guess.
That makes a lot of sense to me, though. I've spent a little bit of time exploring like some country guitar playing recently. And that was directly a result of listening to the Cars and their guitarist Elliot Easton, amazing guitar player. A lot of like rockabilly and country style things that were in there. And I don't listen to a lot of country music myself, but what I am finding now is some of those little like twangy things, those little extra notes they pop in there are starting to find their way into what I do, and it's very enjoyable to like connect those dots backwards.
It's interesting because from the music of yours that I listen to, there's no possible connection there, but I understand how up here there could be some little tidbit. I have a very good friend who is a bluegrass guitarist, and I'm in South Carolina, they're in North Carolina, and that's bluegrass haven. And I've learned at least one tune trying to imitate those rolls on the banjo, and so it's called Alabama Jubilee, and I play it in my show just because it's fun, it's good-natured, it's happy, it's lots of notes, and it feels good. And I've learned something from it, and probably some of those little tidbits slip into other arrangements.
Yeah, they just sort of pepper their way in the subconscious of the music in a fun way.
Yeah.
But I guess that's kind of how you get your personality, right? Musically is just all the little things that get dashed in from time to time. I know starting off younger, I didn't understand how to play like myself. I don't even know that I can put it into words so well either, but I think in my first beginning years, it was a lot of copying, but I'm not sure if it's just that I've copied so many different things now that I've just got a unique form of plagiarism going on here that sounds to me like me. But how do you because that's like something I think a lot of musicians hear, like play it like you, or like you said, play it like you, only better. How do you try to? You're obviously doing this in the book. How do you suggest people go about figuring out who they even are to play like themselves?
I think that one of the best kind of little exercises is to watch yourself interchange with people. Like if you were at a party and you were standing over here watching you interchange, do you do this? Are you really excited? Or do you stand by the wall and you're a wallflower? And you find what would your friends do if they were impersonating you? What would a caricaturist?
I've never thought about that.
Well, think about it, because they're going to see things about you that you may not, whether you like them or not. It says who you are, and when you meet new people, you make a quick evaluation whether it's accurate or not. That person's a nice person. That one's very kind. That one's very soft-spoken. That one's very loud. When I sit down at the piano, if I'm in a place and there's a new piano to touch, I can't resist touching a new piano. I just got to see what it sounds like. And what do? Well, I generally sit down at the middle of the thing and I play a G minor ninth is what I just naturally go to for some reason. And I start improvising around that. But it's very arpeggiated and melodic, and some other person will start playing a heavy rhythm because that's what they do. And those two people at a party would behave differently. And if you don't know who you really are just step outside and look. How do you be?
Mm-hmm.
How do you be? I mean, that's in your default place, you know.
Mm.
What kind of car do you like? What kind of clothes do you like to wear? What kind of people do you like to hang out with? Where do you like to hang out? Do you want to hang out at the library or the bar? Either one, no right answer. Just which one do you do? You're an English major, probably the library.
I wonder.
I wish I was smart enough to be an English major. I love poetry and literature. I'm just not bright enough.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I mean, you're an author.
I didn't take your course in Shakespeare.
No, I don't teach a course in Shakespeare. I'm teaching high school kids. I'm ninth grader right now, so
They're lucky.
I just need to be a step ahead of them. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I wonder if I sat down at that piano based on my personality, I'd probably be playing like one note at a time, real quietly. Then after half an hour, 45 minutes, I'd be banging all over the thing. Once I get comfortable and warmed up to people, you know. That's a funny way to think about it, though. But, you know, it's very telling, and it makes... I've been really paying a lot of attention to just the term emotional impact when I'm playing music, and that is the like main banner over everything I'm doing, and it's helped me get through some inhibitions or some like holdups I've had about even like production techniques, like if I'm going to adjust the timing of something or adjust the pitch of something. My question is always, is this helping the emotional impact? And if it is, then I don't really care how I'm doing it. And sometimes it's, you know, leaving it broken and leaving the performance a little sloppy. That's actually more emotional for me. So thinking about yourself in terms of like noodling on an instrument, you know, is a fun way to sort of get at like this sort of like demeanor of yourself as a person. You know, like you said, you're the G minor ninth, like, kind of like a spicy chord, you know. Like, you know,
it's funny because I just observed myself doing that. That's what I do. I mean, I didn't say now I'm gonna, you know, it's what's the first thing, and I've been doing it for years. I don't know why,
right?
but the important thing is that I know I do it, and sometimes when I'm arranging a new cover tune, I only do covers, as you probably know. I'll start with some of my favorite harmonies. I just, you know, and I think when you were saying that you might doodle around a little bit until you get comfortable and warmed up. If I'm talking about when you're in the room by yourself and nobody's watching, I don't know what you do then, because that's kind of that's your default place. Okay. Nobody's listening.
Yeah.
If I'm in a music store, a piano shop, and somebody might know that I'm a pianist, I'm being careful when I play. You know, I play something intelligent, hopefully. But if I were by myself trying out a new piano, what would I do?
Well, for me, I can almost draw from specific examples because I've got so much music that I've done, especially over the last decade or two, where I've gotten more into recording and producing. But that's very solitary. Whereas most of my life, it was always with other people. And recently, in the last couple of years, started playing with friends in a band again. And the music that we play is definitely different than what I do by myself. And it's faster, it's higher energy, and it's sillier. There's more like just humor to it. Whereas by myself, it's much more reserved, and it can go into a lot of different places. I think if you put me alone in a room and what am I going to play, it's almost just random, like, because I think of myself as, you know, every shade of gray between black and white, you know, and at any given moment, you don't know what you're going to get. But it is something I've noticed about myself clearly, that when I'm around other people, I guess they're close friends mostly, but the music is a little sillier, a little more up-tempo, playful, you know, goofier.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's funny.
I guess this is an interesting subject that I don't I don't know that I have an answer to, because in my own playing, in my concert, I play some lighthearted pieces. The major part of it is intense emotion, but to cleanse the palate, I play things like Dizzy Fingers or Bumble Boogie or something in between, and it's just as much me. But I'm wondering right now. I'm not answering my own question. I'm wondering, could someone say that's still Emile, or I don't know who that player is. I don't know, because it's me in a different aspect. I don't know.
It's almost like maybe even like comic relief a little bit, if we
Yeah,
want to go back to the classical
people need a
stage.
break.
Yeah, the little jokes in the midst of the tragic story,
Yeah.
But that's also really effective in setting up like the dynamics, the emotional dynamics, where if we have a laugh, now to get sad is so much further away, and the laugh is so much further from the sadness.
That's nicely
said.
Just
quiet and loud almost.
In my show, I do humorous monologues to introduce each song. And years ago, I worked in Los Angeles at the Comedy Store, and I learned to write comedy. And so I do humor, but then once I sit down at the piano, then it's usually intense, and I don't say serious as much as sincere, but it's totally filled with intense emotion. I mean, that's what I love doing. Mm-hmm. But it's introduced with humor because I want people to know they can sit down and cross their legs if they like, don't have to sit up straight and don't have to take out their pens and pencils, God forbid.
Please.
Yeah, please.
What was your work at the Comedy Store? Pretty famous.
I was the house pianist. There were several of us, and I played there for 6 years. When I was there, it was a long time ago. So it was from 77 to 83, I was there, about that. And some of the new comics who were not yet discovered were Robin Williams and Jay Leno and David Letterman and Jim Carrey and Jerry Seinfeld. And they were all doing stand-up.
Right.
And I heard hundreds over those years, hundreds of comics. And I watched, I sat in all I did was they'd say, "Here's Jay Leno," and I'd play dun, 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 and then he'd do his set, and I go dun, 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 and that's what I did. Right. Except I played a half-hour set before the show. Mm-hmm. But I played for Improv, the Comedy Store Players, and Robin Williams was one of those, and so it was like the Whose Line Is It? We did that once a week, and I learned a great deal about public speaking. And why is one man funny and why is the other one crash and burn? And how do they handle hecklers? And I just learned, I actually studied comedy because it fascinated me how they did it. I had never done anything like that. And I didn't have a show yet. I was just playing house piano, cocktail, this and that.
I have a lot of respect for stand-up comedians.
Oh, you bet. They're naked.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, they're doing the part of the performance that I find the most difficult, in between songs when you have to talk to the audience. Yeah. It's almost always so awkward, and that's their whole show is that part in between. And I'd rather get up there and sing than have to try to be funny like that.
There's something in the book about that. It says, "You're on stage now, say something." And I hope it would be have some hints on how to go about writing a script, whether it be comedy or not. And what's interesting about comics, and I agree with you, they have a hard job because if someone hears me play and they don't like it, they don't heckle me, they just walk out. But if they don't like the comic, you feel like you have a right to heckle them to join in the show. And I think that's awful.
Oh my God. Yeah. You know what? And I just saw in the news today, somebody attacked Dave Chappelle on stage. I don't know anything about this situation, but it was a couple of weeks ago at the Oscars. There was that incident with slapping
Will Smith.
Yeah. Obviously that's a little more.
That was bizarre.
But you're right that when you're at a comedy show, you sort of feel like you can get involved. What other job is there where somebody comes and tells you you're doing a bad job, bagging groceries, or it's just not how it works. You're not selling that insurance right. But the comics role is like not only are they naked, but they're also up for criticism at any given moment. That's a cool gig.
Yeah.
I must imagine that must have been a lot of fun seeing some of those
It was
people
wonderful. I loved it.
Their early hungry days like that.
Mm.
And they're all about emotional impact. They're all about taking you on that ride and setting you up for something, creating tension and release, just like musicians are. It's something very, they're really conducting the emotions of the crowd.
Yes. And again, no matter how many I watch, I admire how they go from their sequitur, this segue from one thing to the next for usually at the Comedy Store it was a 20-minute set, but when they have their own show, it can be an hour, 2 hours.
Right.
It's remarkable.
And when they're really skillful, they do a nice job weaving their themes and motifs back into the comedy. And it's very musical, now that I think about it. Mm-hmm. Like a composition where you almost come back to the chorus, or you come back to that particular theme that is now familiar and has that extra impact because we recognize it. That's
a nice simile. I like that. I never thought of it.
Yeah. I got to see Seinfeld on stage a couple years back at a casino in Connecticut, which was Foxwoods. And it's a small theater, and he was just hysterical. And he was to watch a master in his craft was just, you watch a master at anything is really interesting.
Yes.
But he also has you emotionally too. I was laughing, I had tears. I felt embarrassed, like I was laughing too hard at the show. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. But he was just so on and nailed it every single time, never stuttered, never skipped a beat. And tied it all together so nicely that when he was done, it felt done. It felt finished. It was like a symphony. It was beautiful.
Wow. That's great. I've never, not since those days, I've never seen him live.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, what a cool story.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something that I saw in the book, that you said you had a hobby of magic.
Yeah.
A sleight of hand magic.
Yes.
Now, I feel like that's another thing, too. That's also kind of taking the audience on a journey. You're playing with the psychology of the audience in a way.
Yes, remembering that I'm an amateur. It's a hobby of mine, and I have a pretty good technique. There's a place in LA called the Magic Castle, and I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but it's a famous magic club. You can audition to become a member, and I auditioned and I passed the audition. But that's because my technique is really, really good. But then I had to perform for an audience for my next audition. And I crashed and burned, and it was horrible. And my knees were shaking. And I said, I'll never do another magic trick in my life again. Please, God, if you're there, send in jackals to eat me. So it was that horrible. No, it was worse. So I've never performed magic, except that's not true. I performed magic on stage. But I studied long and hard to do sleight of hand. And I just loved doing things with my fingers. And I became technically very proficient. Let's say that at sleight of hand.
And as a performer yourself,
Pardon me?
I'm saying as a performer already, you still found that transition to magic. You're praying for the jackals.
Well, that proves there is no God, because I prayed to him to send jackals and he didn't. So therefore, he wasn't listening, or he's not there. I don't know.
Do you find
that was horrible.
Do you find any connections though between how that works and how you are taking the audience for a ride of sorts with magic? Do you see connections there that kind of inform how you understand music, or vice versa?
I've not made that connection myself, but I've seen others like David Copperfield and others. What I always loved about some of the magicians that I love is that they do weave a story. They don't just here's a girl, she's in a box and now she disappears. They make a whole story about it. And David Copperfield is wonderful at weaving story magic, just magic. He's at a cocktail party and he magically produces a glass of champagne or something and he hands it to the girl and then he takes her coat and she's gone or something. Yeah, I mean, but it makes a story. So I think the storyline through a piece of music or any art form that's what people hold on to. And the storyline needs to be told with emotion because emotion is the hook.
Yeah, that's something we've been playing around with the band when we're working on our songs, especially the vocals. Found that, I'm the vocalist. I don't know that I'm a singer, but we all sing. And what has become more and more apparent is there's sometimes when we're singing where we're trying to hit the notes, we're trying to sing the notes. And then there's other times when we're trying to tell the story. And it seems like when you're telling the story, the notes kind of just work out. If you get the phrasing right, if you're saying the words, singing the words in the way you would say them in a sentence almost, that it kind of takes care of itself in a strange way that I'm still trying to understand exactly what's going on there.
Well, I think you said it.
That theme you're saying, like the narrative theme through it is king. It's number one.
When you think of a voice like Joe Cocker or Tom Waits or back in the day Jimmy Durante, there's almost no voice, but it was so moving. Louis Armstrong. I mean, by the way, I love all those artists, but they don't have the traditional vocal quality that you expect to the great singers, But oh my gosh, what storytellers!
Yeah, and I kind of mentioned it earlier how there's virtuosos, and we got shows like American Idol where we find these incredible singers.
Yeah,
but I don't feel it as much. I just there's something about like that, the raspy quality, like a Bob Dylan's voice it's like there's his voice, he's telling the story, and just the sound of his voice is like peppered with scars of stories of the past that brings it home in a real way.
I'm thinking that those singers, unlike me, I'm not a singer at all. I mean, I can hardly talk, let alone sing. But if I ever do sing a song, which I occasionally have been talked into doing, I'm trying to tell a story, and I'm just not good at it, so I don't do it. But I think that people who have a voice like those people we're talking about, they're not thinking, "Am I making a beautiful sound?" They're not. Like if I sounded like if I said I'm going to be a singer, but I sounded like Joe Cocker, I probably, being classically trained, I'd say my teachers and I would say, "No way, no friggin' way, you're going to be." Yet if you just get up and you start singing, and people are in rapt attention because you had something to tell them, I think they're not self-conscious about the quality of their voices. I think they just I have something to say, and this is how I say it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's where it is, I think. And I think that's something you're really getting at nicely in the book. You talk a lot. It's kind of divided, right? So we got like the more, you call it art and application. And there's a lot of technical stuff you go through, but then you sort of explain like why do we do that here? And it's nice to see the application, not to use your word application, but to see how the technique is used to kind of strike up the emotion.
Yeah. It's whatever it takes to get the point across is my thing. And the reason I urge everyone who can to get a traditional education of the technique of their instrument is because the more you have in your bag of tricks, the more you have in your bag of tricks. And from now, if I want to, if I have an idea that I want to get across at the piano, I don't have to worry if I'm going to train my fingers to do it. I just think, what does it sound like? And my fingers do it.
Mm-hmm.
So because of the, 15 years of training.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the more technique you can get, the better, no matter what you ever do with it.
Yeah, I've heard and thought this myself too. And then I think looking back, it was a little bit of a cop out too, but it was, if I learn too much, number one, will I ruin the magic of music where now it's so technical and it's mathematical? And also, will I lose the style, the character? Because, as I'm talking and mentioning all these artists that I like, so many of them are not what you would put on American Idol or what you would put on Guitar Hero Championship round type of thing. It's how they play the notes. And sometimes for some of them, I think it's easy to say that maybe that they do that because they don't know better.
I see what you mean, but they still have to be able to do the thing mechanically, whatever. If they're thinking of an idea, it's, again, I bet I could do that if I just knew how, because I have this great idea, but my fingers won't do it. I think that can be a frustration. I have never felt ever that my technique got in the way of my communication.
Yeah.
Excuse me. There is one time I was doing my Chopin album. It was entirely Chopin. And my producer said, I can't hear the musical forest for the technical trees. And I thought that was nicely said. It was all about technique. And I flunked that one. So we recorded it again with more attention on, because I was playing Chopin and I wanted it to be crystal clear and beautiful and wonderful embellishments. And I liked what he said, but he made me play better.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I've never felt that either. Anytime I learn something new, some new theory or get a little better at a technique, now it's like, oh, cool, I could do that too, to create whatever it is I'm trying to create, to have just another...
A new in your bag of tricks.
Right.
New thing.
Yeah. Now, how do you suggest people then, learn to play like themselves or learn to play from the heart? It's such an abstract thing. I know that's what the book is, right? So we can't give the whole thing away. We want people to pick this thing up. But would you give any particular advice to people if they're told I'm missing the musical forest for the technical trees? How do people start playing from the heart?
I guess. Well,
there's a reason that this book is about 200 or 300 pages, right? So, because this is a long answer, but maybe
but how would you start? Again, you start by being a listener. What would I want to hear? If someone's telling me a story, what would make me go, oh my gosh, and then what happened? And then what happened? And I would say, tell a friend. Here's a good little exercise. Tell a friend something about your day at school or your day with a friend at the beach or something. And you wouldn't say, well, we walked in the woods for a while and then we went home, we stayed at a hotel, it was nice. Or would you say, oh my gosh, we went through the woods. You wouldn't believe how many flowers there are in the woods and how many trees. And then we stayed at this hotel, it's a magnificent hotel. Or you would say, well, we walked in the woods, it was pretty cool. But you would find out how you communicate. How do you communicate? And then your friend's going, well, then you better say, wait a minute, no, this is, I'm serious. Seriously, we had a great time. And you would maybe do it. I think that communicating through an art form has to be bigger than life. And I think you can practice it by overdoing it and overdoing it and overdoing it, and then back it off. You might say, like I'm doing in this little experiment, no, the hotel, you would not believe this hotel. But when I actually say it, I might say, you wouldn't believe this hotel. It's really cool. I might. And I think that telling a story, not making up a story, but telling something that actually happened to you, to an actual friend. You don't have to rehearse how you say it. They say, "Hey, tell me, didn't you go to the beach last week? What was it like?" And then tell them. And something that you enjoyed, something that you want them to know about, because I'm trying to get you to feel how, if you could just be with me at the waves were coming in, they just knocked you down, and some of them just caressed your feet, and there were people everywhere laughing and having a party, and then we had those funny drinks with straws in them, and whatever you did, and try to get the other person to feel what you're feeling. That's one entry point, but there are several examples, many examples in the book.
Well, that's interesting, because the first less exciting way, you're just kind of listing the facts of what happened, but in the other version, that you wouldn't believe what was about to happen, there's kind of like, it's almost musical. it's almost like you switch to like a triplet feel, da 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 da, and then that high thing is like, we're on the cliff, and now we got to get down there to hear what the actual thing we wouldn't believe would be. It's a setup, really. It's and the punchline is what it is.
That's true, but it should be a natural, not a premeditated, fabricated kind of a setup. I now, when I'm doing an arrangement, I do say it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has a climax or a denouement or whatever. It has a place to go. Yes, but that's kind of later in the game. First, I'm saying I have got to show. You're giving someone a gift, and it's a piece of Wedgwood china or something, and you're saying, "Here's this beautiful thing. Don't touch. It's breakable. Don't touch it." or but you want them to. You hope they love it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
yeah. The like presentation of it is important.
Yeah, and when you give them a piece of artwork, they're unwrapping a present. And when you give somebody, I give you a book, I hope you're going to enjoy this book. It was thrilling. I'm not going to give it away, but at the end.
Yeah, I like that. That's a fun way to think about it. When you're preparing to arrange a song, what kinds of things are you looking for? Do you look for maybe like some sort of anchor point or something that you're trying to get to, or is there cues in the music that you decide you want to emphasize, or is it more just kind of you let it happen in its natural way, you try to feel it out?
What I normally do is the latter. I just start playing it, and I play it over and ad nauseum. I have the tape running, and I play it and play it and play it and play it. And then I play it in a different key, and I play it faster, and I play it slower. And at some point, something kind of resonates with me, and I say, "Oh, that was a lovely turn of phrase, and that's in this part of the tune. I wonder if it works in that part of the tune." Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But I usually take several weeks on a pop song that I know very well, because I haven't found a satisfying way to do it yet. So, but I play it and play it and play it, and then, as I say, I have the tape running, because a lot of times, sometimes the first thing out of the box is it. Sometimes, excuse me, but. Sometimes I have to just listen back and take the good parts and learn them.
It's often an approach that I do with songs that I'm working on too, is just play them, try them different ways, mix them up, slow them down, speed them up. And sometimes you just sort of find it. Like there's, I can think of an example recently. It was a song, and it was just happened to be a case where we felt it was well constructed. The song floated, everything worked well, and it had a nice payoff. But it was the tempo and the kind of like rhythmic momentum of the verse we were having a lot of trouble getting right, where it wasn't pulling us into the next section the right way. But eventually, it was just like one day after playing around with it, it was just like, oh, there it is. Like, it was almost as soon as we stopped trying to do it, we kind of just let it be what it wanted to be. We weren't like 1, 2, 3, 4, counting it in. It was just kind of like, why don't you just like start playing the drums for a minute and just see how it feels, and then we'll come in, and it kind of had to blossom a little bit.
Mhm. That's a nice experience to relate. I wonder if the fact that you did all the other stuff first and then you
Yeah.
just played it, you might have got that out of the way. I don't know. It's whatever. I mean, whatever works for you is what works for you. But one of the most important things for me at the piano is to try it in different keys, because it really, I'll play something in the key of F, and then I play it in the key of E flat, and I have totally different idea. And I play it in A flat, and where it lies on the piano, and there's certain embellishments that I can or cannot do in that key. I love trying things in different keys.
Yeah, I've had a lot of luck recently tuning my guitar a half step flat.
Oh,
So I was learning guitar in the 90s when everyone was doing that. So
I didn't know they were doing that.
yeah, a lot of the
Why
bands.
why were they doing it?
I think probably it was, if we're talking about like alternative grunge music, it was just a little lower, a little heavier. For me, it was my voice, really. It was just a little easier to sing those notes. And if I'm playing, like, there's certain keys that play nice on the guitar. They have like the open chords and things like that. Yeah, so that you kind of gravitate towards those often. And some of those notes are just a little bit more than I need them to be, a little higher than I need them to be. So bringing it down just loosened it up a lot.
Yes.
I feel like in a couple of years, I'm going to like try to play these songs again after I get over this phase. I'm like, why did I do that? It's such a pain tuning these songs down.
When you said it's a little bit lower, I can't help thinking of the movie This Is Spinal Tap. Do you remember that?
Yep.
His amplifier went to 11 because it was one louder.
Yeah. Couldn't you just make it 10? But 11's more. It made sense. Yeah, that was a good movie. I particularly like the part when Stonehenge comes out and it's this little tiny, not impressive at all. Yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah, that was great.
So I think I wanted to ask you one more thing here, specifically that I wrote down was you talked about a little bit in the book about the piano and the finger placements. And how there are very specific proper finger placements on the piano. But you were kind of saying of like, learn this stuff, but kind of learn when not to as well. And it got me thinking about guitar, because on guitar, there's a sensible way to play certain notes because the note appears more than once on the fretboard. So it might make sense to play the open string rather than stretch your finger. But sometimes when you do that, you sliding into the note, it changes the tone and gives it more of a movement. I thought I'd just ask you to kind of talk about that a little bit and how that is used for you for emotional impact.
Yeah. A good way on the piano to think about it is if you had the fingering for the scale of C major, all white notes, just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Well, what if he's played a G flat major scale with that same fingering? So it's almost all black notes. So on the G flat, having your thumb. Well, whenever possible, you don't put your thumb on a black key because your thumb's just it's not as long and it can't reach up there, and it's awkward. But the mistake is to say you must never put your thumb on the black key, and even if you say, "Well, I will this time," you're arguing with yourself instead of saying, I want that to be really strong feel, so I'm going to go ahead and hit it with the finger that's nearest to it, which is the thumb in this case, or whatever. And I think that you learn all these things and then you have to throw them away. It's like we've been talking about. You learn the techniques, but then because you need them in your bag of tricks, but then you need to be able to discard them at will. And to this day, I'm not kidding. To this day, I'll play some classical piece of music and I say, I shouldn't be doing this fingering. And I say, duh, I'm 76 years old. I can do anything I want. But the fact that I had to go through that means it's still stuck with me what my teacher said in college. And they didn't mean to stifle my playing. They just said that's as you say, it's the most convenient way to play these notes 90% of the time, 95% of the time. But I think that if you want to play like this because it gets the sound you want, well, do it, and don't feel like it's a wrong fingering. I can't tell you, because I had very traditional, strict classical education. Fingering still, I mean, as I'm doing it, and it still says I'm doing it. I'm a maverick or something. I'm doing it against the rules. I do it, but yeah, it's crazy.
Right. That's funny. Does that pull you out of the moment when you're trying to make that connection?
It can, because now by the time I'm performing it, I've done it enough times that but yes, sometimes on stage, I say, I wonder what other pianists who watch me do this are going to think if I do that. I mean, that actually, and so yes, that would pull me out of the moment. But I've done it enough. I performed enough that I get away with it,
Yeah. Well, I kind of like that you say that, because, you've passed every test, right? You've proven yourself, and the fact that, but these are things we all feel as musicians, and there's always a little bit of self-consciousness going on. There's always afraid you're going to be judged, or someone's going to think like you're not doing it the right way.
Oh, you will be judged.
Yeah, but it's just part of it, and the more I hear that from people that I would have guessed that probably, have every right not to be affected by it, still are.
Well,
it's comforting. It's just like part of it, it's like you just, it's part of life. It's part of the deal.
Yeah. So now, when you're really old, you're still going to feel that way.
Yeah. So just get used to it now. But it's good to know that, in all seriousness, because it can really bloom into a lot of self-doubt. Or, I don't know, bloom sounds too pretty, but it can become something that really affects you. And, in making music and making art and being creative.
Well, I think that's when you're telling a story that you're really into, you forget yourself, and this is not on stage. You're talking to your friend about your experience at the museum. You can't believe what we saw. We went to the Van Gogh exhibit, and it was 3D, and it was, oh my gosh, it was amazing. And you forget because you're not on stage, you're not presenting it. And that's what when I'm playing on stage, most of the time, that's how I feel. I feel like, I can't wait for you to hear this part. This part is really intense.
Yeah, those are the nice moments when you forget yourself. You forget to think about what people are thinking about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool. I'm really happy you're spreading this word out for people, because it's important to think about. And, as we were saying earlier, I think we can conflate just straight up technical ability and skill and all of that with being a good musician, but it's communication, really. And sometimes they're not always the same. And just because I might know grammar, for instance, doesn't mean I can write a great story. Doesn't mean I can write a great poem. There's that other aspect we have to tap into, the much less tangible aspect. But you've done a nice job, and I'm excited to finish the book, about explaining the intangible act of making that emotional connection with the audience, and like, as you say, and I love how you ended all those chapters, and play it like you mean it.
Yeah.
It's like the punchline at the end of the chapter.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to do, and we can only time will tell whether it helps anybody do that.
I think it will. You got me thinking about it more and more, so I appreciate it.
Good.
And I hope people listening will go check it out. Where do you like to send people to get the book?
Amazon, Goodreads, Kobo, wherever they ordinarily go to buy books, and it's available on Kindle as well. And
yeah, okay.
So it's pretty much, if you look up the name in the book, it'll come up in a lot of different places.
Let's Play It Like You Mean It by Emile Pandolfi. They'll be in the show notes. We'll put all the links in there. and also to your website and to some of your music. I really liked it's the fine art and fine piano videos you have.
Oh,
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking a lot about, is like making visual connections when you're doing music. So when if I'm going to like make a new song or something, I can do anything. It could be heavy metal, opera, it could be ambient meditation music. And it's almost overwhelming. And a lot of times I don't even know what to do, and I don't get anywhere. But sometimes by having even just like a visual stimulation, like I'm going to make music for this, I'm going to tie what I'm doing to something else. It doesn't have to be very directly either, but it just cuts out so many choices and it removes so many decisions and focuses the work. And I think it's really cool
nice.
what you have there. That series is just really nice to watch and just to see the details of the painting. And
well, it's nice to put the two together. By the way, when I'm playing a song, I love doing themes from movies and musicals because they already tell you what it's about. The movie, I can see the scene where this music came in and try to create that in my mind. I don't see like a movie screen going along, but I know it's big, vast, open spaces for the theme from Out of Africa. And I can imagine that as I play it. I mean, that really helps me play the way I play that song. And with musicals, there's such good lyrics. They tell you what the song is about. The old standards, they tell you what the song is about. Yeah. So it is visual for me.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here and for writing the book.
This has been delightful.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. A lot to think about and a lot of insight and wisdom that I think will help a lot of people. And like I said in the beginning, it's you are coming from the piano player perspective, but it's music. It might as well be guitar or banjo or whatever.
Or ballet.
Yeah, painting, right? Or just like being a good friend to somebody.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for taking the time, and thank you for everyone for listening. Please you can go to emilepandolfi.com. The links are in the show notes, and check out the book, Play It Like You Mean It. Have a nice day. Thank you too. Hey, if you enjoyed the Music Production Podcast, please consider giving it a review on your favorite podcast provider and share it with a friend, somebody that you think might enjoy the show and get something out of it. That would mean a lot to me. And if you want to check out more of my work, including sound packs, tutorials, etc., head over to brianfunk.com. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.